Russia's military should be destroyed by now. Every expert predicted collapse. They're still fighting. NATO is spending $1 trillion and still don't know how to stop Russia. If the world's most advanced military alliance can't end this, something is fundamentally wrong with how we think wars work. By the end of this video, you'll understand how Russia built a military designed to survive defeat, and why that might be more dangerous than building one designed to win. Subscribe to Nations in Minutes, and let's go back to 1991. The Soviet Union collapses. Russia inherits the world's second-largest military and approximately zero money to maintain it. NATO expands eastward. Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic join by 1999, the Baltics by 2004. Russian generals look at the map and realize something terrifying. They cannot win a conventional war against the West. Not in 1991, not in 2001, not in 2026. The technology gap is insurmountable. An F-35 costs $80 million and can destroy Russian air defenses before they even know it's there. Russia's entire defense budget couldn't buy enough F-35 equivalents to matter. So they stopped trying. 2008. Russia invades Georgia. The war lasts 5 days. Russia wins. But the performance is embarrassing. Communications fail. Units can't coordinate. Officers use personal cell phones to call in artillery strikes. Georgian forces, equipped with outdated Soviet gear, inflict disproportionate casualties. Defense Minister Anatoly Serdyukov launches the most radical military reform in Russian history. He fires 200,000 officers, reduces the army from 1.2 million to 1 million troops, modernizes command structures. But Serdyukov doesn't try to copy NATO. Instead, he asks a different question. What if we assume NATO will destroy our military in the first 2 weeks? What happens on week 3? This changes everything. You don't invest in expensive stealth fighters that get shot down. You invest in systems that can be replaced faster than they're destroyed. You don't centralize command so one strike decapitates your army. You decentralize so losing Moscow doesn't matter. You don't build a military to win the Battle of 73 Easting. You build one to survive it. Russia has 11 time zones. They learned something from Napoleon and Hitler: space as a weapon. During World War II, the Soviets relocated 1,500 factories east of the Ural Mountains. German panzers reached the outskirts of Moscow and found nothing strategic left to capture. Modern Russia applies this lesson to military production. Uralvagonzavod in Nizhny Tagil produces T-90 tanks 1,400 kilometers from Ukraine. NATO can't touch it without triggering World War III. Kalashnikov plants in Izhevsk, artillery production in Perm, missile assembly in Votkinsk, all deep inside Russian territory, all operating 24/7 since February 2022. Did you know Russia is producing 250 T-90M tanks annually? Just compare that to Germany, which pledged 18 Leopard 2 tanks over 2 years. Ukraine destroys what, 3 Russian tanks? Russia builds 12. The math is brutal. They're not building the best tanks. They're building tanks faster than you can destroy them. Ukraine fires 6,000 artillery shells per day at peak capacity. Russia fires 20,000, sometimes 60,000. This isn't ancient history. This is last year's data. Russia maintains 5,000 to 6,000 artillery pieces in Ukraine. They lose 150 artillery systems per month, and they replace 200. The U.S. produces 36,155 mm shells monthly. Russia produces between 250,000 and 300,000 shells monthly per Estonian intelligence. I'm not kidding. Russia is outproducing the entire Western military-industrial complex in artillery ammunition by a factor of 7. Because they made a choice decades ago. Precision costs money. Volume wins wars. An American Excalibur GPS guided shell costs $112,000. A Russian 152mm shell costs $600. You do the math. Of course, there's a dark part to this as well. Russia takes 1,200 casualties per day, according to UK Ministry of Defense estimates. Over 700,000 total casualties since the invasion began. Any NATO country would literally collapse under this attrition. Public outcry. Elections lost. Governments overthrown. Russia keeps mobilizing. They're offering $22,000 signing bonuses to new recruits. That's more than the average Russian makes in 2 years. They're recruiting 30,000 troops monthly. The Russian military treats soldiers as consumable assets, not because they're evil, because the doctrine requires it. You can't sustain 20,000 artillery shells per day without accepting that artillery crews die. You can't maintain pressure along a 1,000-kilometer front without accepting that assaults get shredded. Western militaries design around protecting soldiers. Russia designs around replacing them. That is exactly what terrifies everyone at NATO. Russia's current force in Ukraine represents roughly 15% of their mobilization potential. They have 2 million reservists with military training, men who served in actual combat units. If Russia declares full mobilization today, they could field 3 million troops within 6 months. The equipment exists, stored in massive depots. Thousands of T-72 tanks in long-term storage. Mothballed BMP infantry fighting vehicles. Stockpiled artillery from Soviet overproduction. Much of it is obsolete. Some of it barely functions. But volume overcomes quality in attrition warfare. NATO has 3.5 million active troops total, spread across 31 countries, defending the entire Atlantic Alliance from the Arctic to the Mediterranean. If Russia mobilized fully, they could match NATO's European ground forces, while NATO is still arguing about who pays for ammunition. Look, Russian logistics look incompetent because we judge them by NATO standards. NATO logistics: precision, just-in-time delivery, computerized supply chains, maintenance schedules, quality over quantity. Russian logistics: railways, stockpiles, dump ammunition at the front, accept 30% supply loss, keep moving. It looks stupid until you realize it's intentional. Yeah, Russia has 86,000 kilometers of railway, more than any country except the US. Their entire logistical system is built around rail. Troops move by rail, ammunition moves by rail, tanks move by rail. This seems primitive. Railways are vulnerable to sabotage, airstrikes, bottlenecks. Except Russia has been defending railways against partisans since 1918. They're very good at it, and railways have one massive advantage: capacity. One train moves 200 tanks. Moving 200 tanks by truck requires 400 drivers, 400 trucks, 400 maintenance crews, and fuel depots every 300 kilometers. A train needs one engineer and a track. During the 1943 Battle of Kursk, the Soviets moved 1.3 million troops by rail in 6 weeks. Modern Russia applies the same doctrine. NATO logistics are faster, more flexible, more efficient per ton moved. Russian logistics move more tons. There's this myth that Russia is running out of equipment. They're not. ISS estimates Russia still has 7,000 tanks in storage. Maybe 40% are functional without major refurbishment. That's still 2,800 tanks. They've lost roughly 3,300 tanks in Ukraine, according to Oryx visual confirmations. They keep fighting. Another myth is that the sanctions crippled Russian production. Russia spends $166 billion in defense for 2026, representing 38% of federal budget. They're importing $4 billion in sanctioned goods through intermediaries. Microchips from China, machine tools from Turkey, ball bearings from Kazakhstan. The shell corporations are obvious. Western governments know. And Russia keeps producing anyway. Myth 3. Russian morale is collapsing. Maybe it is. Desertion rates are reportedly climbing. Units refuse orders. Soldiers execute incompetent commanders. But the system doesn't break. Because Russian doctrine doesn't depend on high morale. It depends on continuous replacement. demoralized soldiers still absorb bullets. I know that sounds horrific, because it is. Let me show you the nightmare scenario NATO planners lose sleep over. Ukraine has mobilized nearly its entire military-age male population. They're conscripting 40-year-olds, pulling men from essential industries, fielding understrength battalions. They're winning tactically in many engagements. Ukrainian soldiers are better trained, better motivated, better led than Russian forces. But attrition doesn't care about motivation. Russia has 4 times Ukraine's population, 10 times its industrial base, and no democratic pressure to stop. Ukraine has destroyed over 8,000 Russian armored vehicles. Russia keeps attacking. Ukraine has killed over 400,000 Russian soldiers. Russia keeps mobilizing. This is the doctrine in practice. Accept catastrophic losses, maintain pressure, wait for the enemy to exhaust their reserves. It worked against Napoleon, worked against Hitler, working against Ukraine. Russia didn't design a military to win wars. They designed one that cannot be defeated quickly. NATO can destroy Russia's Black Sea Fleet. Already happened. NATO can obliterate Russian tank columns with precision strikes. Ukraine demonstrates this daily. NATO can dominate the air, control logistics, win every engagement. And Russia will still be fighting in year 3. Because speed is a Western advantage, Russia decided not to contest. Every NATO operation plan assumes defeating the enemy's military ends the war. Gulf War. 100 hours of ground combat. Iraq's military collapses. War over. Afghanistan. Taliban government falls in weeks. Mission accomplished. Russia built a system where destroying the military doesn't end the war. You destroy their tanks? They build more tanks. You kill their soldiers? They mobilize more soldiers. You sanction their economy? They shift to war production. There is no decapitation strike, no decisive battle, no collapse point. So if Ukraine, with $100 billion in Western aid, struggles to stop Russia, what happens if Russia invades a NATO member? Article 5 triggers. The alliance responds. American F-35s obliterate Russian air defenses in 48 hours. NATO armored divisions push toward Moscow. And then what? Russia trades space for time, mobilizes 3 million troops, shifts to full war economy, starts firing 100,000 artillery shells per day. NATO runs out of precision ammunition in 3 months, has to wait for factories to retool, faces pressure from voters who never signed up for this. Russia doesn't have voters, they have conscripts. This is their design philosophy. You can't shock and awe a country that expects to lose the shock and awe phase. You can't demoralize a population that's been propagandized for decades. You can't outproduce an economy that stopped producing consumer goods and started producing shells. Russia designed a military NATO struggles to defeat because they designed it to survive NATO defeating them. There's no glory in this. So if Russia built a military designed for endless war, what happens when a smaller country does the opposite and makes invasion itself impossible? What do you think? If you want to see the counter-strategy to everything we just discussed, watch our breakdown of how Finland designed a military Russia can't defeat. Because Finland looked at the same problem and built something Russia refuses to test. Click right here to watch that next. Subscribe to Nations in Minutes.